Welcome to the Daily News Currents. Today is Tuesday, October 29th, and for today's headlines we have the mysterious ketamine queen at the center of Matthew Perry's case. Montana camper found dead was killed but not by bear, authorities said. At the heart of the Boeing strike, an emotional fight over a lost pension plan. Off-color jokes, vitriol take over Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Where Harris and Trump stand on three big healthcare issues. The mysterious ketamine queen at the center of Matthew Perry's case. 1 year after Mr. Perry's death, Jasveen Sagna is in jail awaiting trial on charges that she sold him the ketamine that killed him. A few weeks after Matthew Perry was discovered floating face down in a hot tub, the woman who prosecutors say supplied the ketamine that killed the actor was indulging in afternoon tea at a five-star hotel in Japan and taking mere selfies while modeling a kimono. Several months later, she posted highlights from her trip to Mexico, where she enjoyed caviar at the airport, sitting poolside at the beach, and admiring a drink within a coconut. The woman, Jasveen Sagna liked to share images of a glamorous life on social media, of herself rubbing elbows with celebrities and traveling around the world to Spain, China, and Dubai. But her home was a mid-rise building for the aspiring upper class in North Hollywood, an unglamorous space in an unremarkable part of town. It was there, prosecutors said, that Miss Sagna manufactured, stored, and distributed illegal drugs for at least 5 years, including those connected to the deaths of Mr. Perry and another man. When the authorities raided Miss Sagna's fourth-floor apartment in March, they said they found cocaine, 79 vials of ketamine, and 3 pounds of orange pills containing methamphetamine. Prosecutors emphasized in court documents that customers knew her as the ketamine queen. Given the volume of drugs defendants sold, there are likely more victims, they wrote in court documents. Ms. Sagna was initially arrested in March on drug charges and released on bail, but in August, federal prosecutors brought a new indictment accusing her and 4 other people of playing a role in Mr. Perry's death. The judge revoked her bail, citing concerns that she was a flight risk and a danger to the community, and sent her to jail to await trial. 2 months later, her name still appeared on a buzzer box in North Hollywood. The wood paneling on her apartment door was cracked and mostly missing, exposing a busted lock. On a recent weekday morning, a cleaner stood on a stool inside the Barron unit that prosecutors say have spent years as a stash house, busy scrubbing the cabinets. A jet setter. Mr. Perry died on October 28, 2023, of acute effects of ketamine, a powerful anesthetic that has become increasingly popular as therapy for depression and is also used as a recreational drug. The actor, known in his role for Chandler Bing on the 1990 sitcom Friends, has written openly about his struggles with addiction in a memoir. Ms. Sagna, 41, has pleaded not guilty to charges connected with Mr. Perry's overdose, including distributing of ketamine resulting in death, and is scheduled to stand trial in March. If convicted of all charges, she would face a sentence between 10 years and life in prison. A spokeswoman for the U.S. Attorney's Office declined to comment. When the charges were announced, Martin Estrada, a U.S. attorney in California, said in a statement, "Drug dealers selling dangerous substances are gambling with other people's lives over greed." In an interview with the Today Show that aired on Monday, Suzanne Morrison, Mr. Perry's mother, said she was thrilled that people including Ms. Sagna had been charged. Mr. Perry's stepfather, Keith Morrison, voiced his agreement. "What I'm hoping, and I think the agencies that got involved in this are hoping, that people who have put themselves in the business of supplying people with drugs that'll kill them, that they are now on notice," Mr. Morrison said. "It doesn't matter what your professional credentials are. You're going down, baby." Mark Garagos, a lawyer whose firm is handling Ms. Sagna's case, declined to comment. But in an interview with News Nation in August, he questioned how the authorities could be sure they knew the origin of the ketamine that killed Mr. Perry. "Just because it's a tragedy doesn't mean it's criminal," he said. Ms. Sagna graduated from high school in Calabasas, an affluent Los Angeles suburb, in 2001 before earning an undergraduate degree in social sciences from the University of California, Irvine, and an MBA in Holt International Business School in London. On an Instagram account, Ms. Sagna advertised herself as a curator of art and events and a jet setter who routinely hopped between London and Los Angeles. She bolstered that image with photos and videos from pools, dance parties, and fancy dinners around the world, appearing with Charlie Sheen, DJ Khaled, and Perella Hudson. the ex-wife of the guitarist Slash. Representatives for Mr. Sheen and DJ Khaled did not respond to requests for comment. Attempts to reach Ms. Hudson were unsuccessful. When Miss Sagna turned 40 last year, she celebrated in a feathery pale pink dress and a matching cowboy hat, according to videos she posted online. At the party in the Kiss Kiss Bang Bang lounge inside a boutique hotel in Los Angeles, hot pink lights radiated out from a disco ball rotating overhead. The music made the comfy seats vibrate, while silver buckets awaited ice and champagne. Prosecutors say that it is unclear how Miss Sagna financed her lifestyle. They say she drove a Range Rover and BMW at various times, and that it appeared she had been unemployed since at least 2019. Before that, she had for a time been involved with Stiletto Nail Bar in Studio City, an upscale neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley, according to business records. When Ms. Sagna was initially arrested in March on the charge of drug dealing, her mother, Neelam Sagna, secured the $100,000 bond for her release, according to court records. Neelam Sagna did not respond to requests for comment, and several attempts to reach other members of Jasveen Sagna's family by phone and in person were unsuccessful. A woman who answered a number listed in court records for Ms. Sagna declined to comment. Much remains unknown about Ms. Sagna beyond what she has presented publicly online. In her senior portrait inside Calabasas High School yearbook, she wears an inscrutable expression, not unlike the Mona Lisa. The accompanying quotation reads, "It isn't what they say about you, it's what they whisper." Deadly ketamine. Mr. Perry was not the only person who died after buying ketamine from Ms. Sagna, prosecutors allege in the indictment. The court documents say that Cody McLaury died of an overdose shortly after Ms. Sagna sold him ketamine in August 2019. Despite knowledge of Mr. McLaury's death, prosecutors say, Ms. Sagna continued to distribute illegal drugs from her apartment for the next 5 years. Ms. Sagna heard of Mr. Perry's interest in ketamine through an acquaintance who was in touch with the actor's personal assistant and offered to send a sample, court documents said. She sought to project an air of exclusivity, calling her supply amazing and telling her acquaintance Eric Fleming, "Take one and try it, and I have more if he likes." 2 days after the offer, prosecutors say, Ms. Sagna sent the actor a ketamine sample in an unlabeled glass vial with a blue cap. The government says Mr. Fleming and Mr. Perry's assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, acted as intermediaries. The next day, Mr. Iwamasa bought 25 vials on Mr. Perry's behalf, according to the indictment. When he bought 25 more vials 2 weeks later, Ms. Sagna threw in some ketamine lollipops as well. One of those 50 vials contained the ketamine that killed Mr. Perry, prosecutors say. Mr. Fleming and Mr. Iwamasa have both pled guilty to criminal charges. After Ms. Sagna learned of the actor's death through news reports, she quickly sought to destroy evidence of her involvement, prosecutors said in court documents. "Delete all of our messages," she told Mr. Fleming. That level of caution appeared to dissipate over the following months, prosecutors say. In July, not long before she was arrested in connection with Mr. Perry's death, Ms. Sagna posted a photo on social media of a bracelet with several mushroom charms and a message, "Pulling out old reaper candy, #rave to the grave." Prosecutors later wrote in a court filing that the post suggested Ms. Sagna would persist in her drug lifestyle until death, and that the #rave to the grave hashtag was a callous choice of words, considering her actions have sent 2 victims to theirs. Montana camper found dead was killed, but not by a bear, authorities say. More than 10 weeks after a Montana camper was found murdered in his tent, authorities are asking locals to be on the lookout for a large axe and several guns they believe to be taken from the crime scene. It is the latest development in a case that has captivated the public since mid-October, when a friend reported 35-year-old Dustin Kajersim dead of a possible bear attack, but investigators quickly ruled the case a homicide and still haven't taken anyone into custody. People have asked me if there's a threat to this community, and the answer is we don't know, Gallatin County Sheriff Dan Springer said at a press conference earlier this month. We don't have enough information to know at this time, but we do know that someone was out there who killed someone in a very heinous way. In a social media update posted Thursday, the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office thanked the community for providing information and said multiple leads are being investigated. Here's what we know so far. Kajersim was found dead with multiple chop wounds during a camping trip. Kajersim of Belgrade, Montana, was last seen on the afternoon of Tuesday of Thursday, October 10th, when he drove to a makeshift campground in Moose Creek to spend the weekend with a friend. The area, just north of Big Sky, is fairly remote but typically busy with hunters and campers, according to the authorities. They say Kajursim set up a wall tent roughly 8 by 10 feet and stocked it with essentials. He was well prepared for the weekend of camping and had plans to meet with a friend on Friday afternoon, Investigative Captain Nathan Cameron said at a press conference, but he never made that meeting. The friend, who has not been identified, went looking for Kajursim and found his body around 10 a.m. local time on Saturday. The sheriff's office said in its initial statement that the caller indicated that the death may have been caused by a bear attack. But wildlife officials, including a Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks agent with expertise in bear attacks, didn't find any signs of bear activity in the scene, which prompted investigators to treat the case as a homicide. Evidence gathered through an autopsy further indicated that this was a homicide, it said. Cameron said that the autopsy showed that Kajursim sustained multiple chop wounds that led to his death. Springer said at the press conference that the murder weapon was still undetermined, but authorities know it was something hard enough to cause significant damage to the skull, as well as some flesh areas of the body. Authorities are asking for public information, including about possible weapons. Last week, the sheriff's office asked the public to be on the lookout for a number of items that are believed to have been removed from the scene of the crime: an Estwick camp axe, likely with a 26-inch handle, a Remington shotgun, a Ruger Blackhawk revolver, and an Orange Yeti brand cooler. They said anyone with information about the items or about the case at all should contact their office by phone or email. Investigators and Kajursim's family are imploring people to come forward with any information that might be of help, no matter how small it may seem. The sheriff said the remote location of the crime scene with limited cell phone service and the lag between the murder occurred and was reported make it especially hard to piece together what happened. Think of this as a large jigsaw puzzle, Springer said. It might be that little piece that puts this together for us. They have shared a photo of Kajursim's black 2013 Ford F-150 and are asking anyone who saw him or the vehicle to come forward. They are also urging anyone who's in the area of Moose Creek or Galton Canyon between Thursday afternoon and Saturday morning to reach out with information, especially if they saw anything out of the ordinary or happen to have game or car cameras in the vicinity. They can do that by calling this number during business hours or this number and selecting option 1 to reach a dispatcher for after hours or urgent tips. There is someone in our valley that is capable of truly heinous things, Kajursim's sister, Jillian Price, said at a press conference. Please, if you were in Moose Creek at any time from Thursday to Saturday, please call and talk, even if you think you didn't see any. Kajursim was a beloved father and outdoorsman. Price described her brother as hardworking, skilled tradesman who was born in Bozeman and worked all around the area. He could have framed your house. He could have poured your foundation. He could have installed your countertops, she said. He was a loving, helpful, and adoring father who in no way deserved this. Kajursim doted on his daughter and stepson, according to his obituary, and could sit with them for hours doing crafts together. His home resembled an elementary classroom because he hung everything they made, it reads. Dustin would send pictures of their work as if his kids had just painted the Mona Lisa. He loved fishing from a young age and developed a passion for snowboarding as a teenager. According to his obituary, it was rare for people to refer to him by his name. He went by a series of nicknames over the years, including Duct Tape, Cupcake, and Cage. If you are a fish or an antelope, the world just became a safer place, it says. No longer in tandem will Cage and his best friend Matt hunt you down, but for the rest of us there will be a hole, a space in our world that will never be filled. Kajursim was survived by his parents, 2 children, 3 sisters, grandfather, and many adults and uncles. At the heart of the Boeing strike, an emotional fight over a lost pension plan. At a rally here this month, Machinists Union Vice President Gary Allen addressed a hall full of striking Boeing workers. When I'm out on the picket line, I ask everybody, what is the strike about to you, he said. Allen didn't have a chance to answer his own question before the machinists in the room interrupted. Pension, 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 they chanted. Pensions are a major sticking point between Boeing and the union. The machinists want the company to restore the traditional pension plan they lost a decade ago, but Boeing hasn't budged. The strike is now in its 7th week after union members rejected the company's last proposal. The union said late Sunday night it has been in communication with the U.S. Department of Labor in an effort to spearhead getting back to the table. The work stoppage has hobbled production at Boeing's airplane factories in the Pacific Northwest, contributing to a $6 billion quarterly loss for the company. On some issues, the two sides have moved closer to an agreement, but when it comes to pension plan, they remain very much at odds. Definitely the loss of that pension is still there, right at the heart of this for many, said John Holden, the president of the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers District 751, after members voted down the company's latest offer last week. The union says Boeing pushed members to give up their pension plan to 2014, in part by threatening to move production of new planes elsewhere if they didn't. The company replaced the pension with a 401k retirement plan. A decade later, many workers still feel cheated. The 401k program is gambling on our retirement, said Kat Kitchener, a union steward who worked at Boeing for close to 15 years. To take away the pension and not compensate us enough to cover it is just another takeaway, and there's nothing unreasonable about wanting it back. Boeing is hardly the only company that eliminated traditional pensions, which are increasingly rare, especially in the private sector. It's a very costly and risky benefit to take on, said Craig Copeland with the Employee Benefit Research Institute in Washington, D.C. The employee is promised a benefit, and the employer must come up with that money to pay for it, Copeland said. If the company's investments don't perform well, it's still on the hook for pension payments, so therefore, it could push them towards bankruptcy. By contrast, 401k plans are cheaper and easier for employers, but critics say they push all the risk responsibility onto workers. There's now real recognition that workers want both good wages and good pensions, said Karen Friedman, the executive director of the Pension Rights Center. There's a growing appetite for secure pensions, and I think we're going to see more of it, honestly. Lately, more unions have been trying to bargain to get these benefits back, but so far, none of them have succeeded. If they did, they would kind of be turning back history for a lot of different people, said Art Wheaton, director of labor studies at Cornell University's School of Industrial and Labor Relations. The United Auto Workers Union tried to get a traditional plan pension back in a strike last year. That didn't happen, but the union did push the big three automakers to offer better retirement benefits and wages, and Wheaton understands why the Boeing Machinist Union is making the same ask. If you had it for decades and you gave it up in the last negotiations, it's not unreasonable to ask for it to get reinstated, Wheaton said, but I don't think it's achievable. Boeing has improved its offer to the union on wages and other issues, but not on pensions. The head of the machinist union local, John Holden, was asked last week what happens if the impasse continues. If they're not willing to give it, we will have to get something that replaces it, and we haven't gone that far, Holden said. So it does come down to wages. It does come down to the 401k plan. What Holden is describing looks a lot like the deals that have ended other recent strikes. Boeing might hold the line on pensions, but it would have to pay even more in wages and retirement benefits than it's been willing to offer so far. Off-color jokes, vitriol, take over Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Trump put on a rally in New York City's Madison Square Garden on Sunday to kick off the final full week of campaigning for president, complete with celebrity guests and a new economic proposal. But repeated insults and, at times, racist and misogynistic remarks from guest speakers threatened to grab most attention. The final weeks of the campaign are often when candidates put forth a unifying message to gather as many voters as possible. Trump's Madison Square Garden rally was instead marked by swear words, racist jokes about Latinos, and misogynistic remarks. The focus could help Trump grab headlines and mobilize some existing supporters, though it is unlikely to bring in new voters who have already turned off by some of the Republicans' presidential candidate rhetoric. The first speaker at the former president's Madison Square Garden rally, roast comedian and podcast host Tony Hinchcliffe, set the tone with a disparaging joke and welcoming Latinas into the U.S. with open arms while making a shoot-in motion. He also disparaged Latinos with a crass joke about making babies and illegal immigration, quipped that Puerto Rico is a floating island of garbage, and joked that Kansas City Chief tight end Travis Kelce might be the next O.J. Simpson, referring to the football star who was accused and later acquitted of murdering his ex-wife. Kelsey is in a relationship with pop singer Taylor Swift, who earlier this year said she would vote for Vice President Kamala Harris. Trump has made anti-immigration rhetoric a centerpiece of his campaign as president. He also talked about ending the automatic right to citizenship for babies born in the U.S. to non-citizens, although many scholars agree changing the law will require a constitutional amendment. The Trump campaign is currently fighting to get votes from women and Latinos. Polls suggest the gender gap in this year's election could be the largest on record. The Harris campaign, in contrast, has been highlighting stories of women whose lives have been threatened by strict abortion bans. The Harris campaign immediately seized on Hinchcliffe's remarks about Puerto Rico. In a tweet posted after his introduction, Hinchcliffe wrote in response, "These people have no sense of humor." He also added, "I love Puerto Rico and vacation there. I made fun of everyone. Watch the whole set." Trump's campaign has also distanced himself from Hinchcliffe's remarks. The joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign, Danielle Alvarez, a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, said in a statement. Defining who is American. The rally marshaled high-profile Trump supporters, including Terry Bollea, better known as the professional wrestler Hulk Hogan, television personality Dr. Phil McGraw, and singer-songwriter Lee Greenwood. But other Trump allies appeared to an us-versus-them mentality. Radio host Sid Rosenberg insulted former Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, as well as the Democratic Party as a whole. The whole party, a bunch of degenerates, he added, Jew haters and lowlifes, every single one of them. Multiple speakers also insulted Harris, with private equity fund manager Grant Cardone calling her a fake. Her and her pimp handlers will destroy our country. Conservative commentator Tucker Carlson made fun of Harris's mixed-race heritage. It's going to be pretty hard for Democrats to look at us and say, you know what? Kamala Harris, she's got 85 million votes because she's just so impressive. As the first Samoan Malaysian low IQ, former California prosecutor, ever to be elected president, it's just a groundswell of popular support. Carlson went beyond insults, nodding to the racist great replacement theory he has espoused in the past. People know in a country that has been taken over by a leadership class that actually despises them and their values and their history and their culture and their customs, really hates them to the point that it's trying to replace them, he said. They know someone who is actually affection for them, and that's Donald Trump, and it's requited. That sentiment was echoed later when former Trump White House aide Stephen Miller told the crowd, "America is for Americans, and Americans only." Tax credits and enemy from within. After more than a 4-hour pre-program of speakers, Melania Trump made a rare campaign trail appearance, introducing her husband. In his speech, Trump started by laying out the economic message, emphasizing that inflation that hit the country under the Biden administration and saying he would fix it. He also announced a new policy, saying he'd implement a tax credit for people caring for family members at home. Harris earlier this month announced her own plan to expand Medicare to cover that kind of caregiving. Trump also devoted a large section of his speech, as he often does, to the topic of undocumented immigrants. "Once I take office, the migrant invasion of our country ends and the restoration of our country begins," he told the crowd. Trump also took the time to address the recent interview with Fox News, in which he characterized radical left lunatics as the enemy from within and proposed using the military against him. He stood behind those comments at Sunday night's rally. "They're smart, they're vicious, and we have to defeat them," he said. "And when I say the enemy from within, the other side goes crazy, becomes a sound. Oh, how can he say that? No, they've done very bad things to this country. They are indeed the enemy from within." However, Trump still attempted to make his speech into a message of unity. "The Republican Party has become the party of inclusion, and there's something nice about that," he said near the end of his remarks. Here's where Harris and Trump stand on 3 big healthcare issues. As the 2024 election heads into its final weeks, the direction of policies affecting the health of millions of Americans is at stake. The next president and Congress will have the power to put their mark on major healthcare programs like Medicare and Medicaid that combine to cover nearly 150 million Americans. They will be able to direct resources for how the United States fights the drug overdose crisis and how the country prepares for the next pandemic. A recent survey found that 2/3 of Americans say healthcare should be receiving more attention in the presidential campaign, and there are several crucial healthcare policies the next president is likely to face in their first year. Here are the candidates' views on 3 issues. What is the future of Medicare's drug price negotiations? The Biden-Harris administration scored a historic win by giving Medicare the power to directly negotiate the prices of some of the most expensive prescription drugs. Federal health officials, the first 10 negotiated prices take effect in 2026, patients and Medicare will save $7.5 billion altogether. Some high-ranking congressional Republicans want to repeal that authority, arguing that reducing drug makers' profits will shrink their incentive to develop the next blockbuster treatment. Several pharmaceutical companies have also sued the federal government, claiming that Medicare negotiating powers are unconstitutional. Trump has not said if he supports repealing the law or whether he would continue to defend it in court. Stacy Dunsenzina, a professor of health policy at Vanderbilt University Medical Care, says Medicare's new authority is still vulnerable. Once you give Medicare beneficiaries improved benefits, it's really hard to take those away. But I think that's because the negotiated prices won't go into effect until 2026. No one will miss them if they are repealed. Harris has said on the campaign trail she wants Medicare to accelerate the speed of negotiations so that the prices of more drugs come down faster. Experts believe that they would likely mean either negotiating the price of more drugs or begin to bargain either in a drug's lifetime. Either move would require congressional sign-off. Harris's campaign says she would invest any additional savings in new policy proposals, like expanding Medicare coverage for home health care, but a recent report from the Congressional Budget Office estimates that an additional funds from such an effort would be minimal. Dunsenzina says it's also unclear whether Harris's plan would slow the pipeline for new drugs. I think it's worth being a bit cautious about how big and broad you go immediately, she says. I want to see. What does that mean for drug development? What does it mean for access for patients? Trump has not yet explained how his administration would run the negotiations. Healthcare experts note a Trump administration would have limited ability to undermine the law if it remained in place, because the rules direct Medicare which medications to pick for negotiation, and sets minimum discounts the government must seek. Should Congress extend the Affordable Care Act's enhanced subsidies? For those who buy their own health insurance on the ACA's marketplaces, the federal government covers a portion of the monthly health insurance premiums that many pay. Under the original law, lawmakers capped that assistance to individuals who made up to 400% of the federal poverty line. Today, that's about $125,000 for a family of 4. Democrats in Congress removed the income cap in 2021 and increased the size of subsidies. Consumers' portion of their premiums have been nearly cut in half, according to the nonpartisan health research organization KFF. Since the subsidy increase, the number of people signing up for ACA coverage has nearly doubled to more than 21 million people. These enhanced subsidies, as they're called, are set to expire at the end of 2025. If that happens, KFF estimates monthly premiums for people with subsidized ACA plans would double in many states, and their Congressional Budget Office estimates that the enrollment of ACA coverage would decline by 7 or 8 million people. The CBO estimates about half of those people would instead get coverage through work. Vice President Harris says she wants to make these subsidies permanent, costing Washington an estimated $335 billion over the next decade. Former President Trump has not stated a position, but many Republicans, including former Trump officials, argue that the benefit should expire. Many Republicans point to a report issued this year by conservative Paragon Health Institute that found as many as 5 million people misstated their incomes, potentially attempting to defraud the government and qualify for $0 premium health plans, according to Paragon. This activity cost taxpayers up to $26 billion. Other health policy experts say there are less nefarious explanation. Cynthia Cox, a vice president with KFF, said it can be very difficult, especially for people in many low-wage jobs, to forecast their annual earnings. What may look shady on paper may in reality be a best guess gone wrong. It might depend on how many tips you get, or how many rides you pick up, or how many shifts you work, Cox said. So that's where I think some important nuances to consider, like is this really fraud or not? There are provisions in the law, Cox added, to force people to pay back all or part of their subsidy if their estimate was incorrect. Michael Cannon, the director of health policy at the Libertarian Cato Institute, blames the subsidies for fostering another form of fraud perpetuated by insurance brokers. Federal health officials have received 275,000 complaints this year about brokers signing people up for Obamacare coverage without their consent. Brokers receive a commission for every person they enroll in coverage, and consumers who do not have to pay a monthly premium may be less likely to notice a change in their insurance. If more enrollees had to pay at least a little something in order to enroll these plans, that would check a lot of unscrupulous behavior by brokers, Cannon said. Federal officials have suspended 850 brokers, proposed new rules to crack down on unscrupulous broker behavior, and have resolved nearly all complaints. Will medication abortion remain available? Nearly 2/3 of abortions in the U.S. are now medication abortions, typically involving a regimen of 2 pills, mifepristone and misoprostol. In June, the U.S. Supreme Court dismissed an attempt by anti-abortion advocates to strike down the Food and Drugs Administration's longstanding approval of and expand it across to mifepristone. But depending on the election, new leaders at the FDA could move to restrict or further expand access to medication abortion. Under the Biden-Harris administration, the FDA has allowed doctors to prescribe mifepristone to any patient via telehealth instead of requiring patients to see an in-person provider. Telehealth prescriptions now enable 1 in 5 abortions in the U.S. Harris has made protecting and expanding abortion access a centerpiece of her campaign. Trump has flip-flopped. On some occasions, the former president said he would not restrict access, and on others, that he would be open to federal restrictions. Project 2025, the conservative governing blueprint authored by former Trump officials and other close advisors, calls for the FDA to withdraw its approval of mifepristone. I think a lot of people know that we can trust what he's saying because it's consistently different, said Adriana Coe, an associate professor of law at the University of the Pacific. If the Trump administration did restrict or cut off access to mifepristone, people could still have medication abortions just using the other pill, misoprostol. Misoprostol used alone is safe and effective, but can have more side effects. Uncertainty around Trump's health policy. Harris's position on the 3 issues are clear. She supports expanding ACA-enhanced subsidies, she backs medication abortion, and would like to hit the gas on Medicare drug negotiations. It is more difficult to guess what would happen to health policy under a second Trump administration because he has not taken public positions on many major issues. When former President Trump describes his plans, the language is often so general it's hard to read into, the KFS Cox. For example, until recently, one of Trump's clearest positions on prescription drug prices was the most favored nation policy he put forward late in his first term. It would have forced drug makers to sell certain drugs to Medicare at rates paid by other countries. Within the last few weeks, Trump's campaign told Politico and Stat that the former president would not revive the policy in a second term. Beyond that now dropped policy, Ben Ippolito, a health economist at the conservative American Enterprise Institute, said it's a little bit harder to predict how Trump would tackle health care. That is all for today. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.